Hello everyone, this is update for August 17, 2024, day 906 of the war and of the date update. Also catch up for August 16, 15 and 14. Sorry for missing proper sequence. I'm gonna start with a general update, and then we're gonna switch to the situation on the battlefield in Ukraine, which I guess getting more and more intense by day. But first, let's look at the macroeconomic situation in the world. And first, there is data from European Union. This is aggregate data for basically continental Europe. And I just want to point at this industrial production for June. It's continuing to decline year on year. I'm sure Germany is adding significant amount to this decline, but as we can see, there's deindustrialization of Europe is happening as a result of the war on conventional energy. And industrial production, for those who are not familiar, I just want to explain this includes three pieces: actual manufacturing, what we sort of think about, typical, then mining, and then energy production. So in some ways, it's kind of like, you first mine raw materials, you use energy to do that, and then you use energy through the process to manufacture final finished goods. So this kind of most comprehensive, I'd say, metric that explains the whole situation in this whole industrial complex. Anyways, and I missed, unfortunately, for May, but we can see that things are getting from bad to worse in Europe as a whole. Now let's look at China, where things also not great at all. And first we start with residential situation, with residential real estate, which just means house prices, where everybody sort of lives. And we can see that the negative trend in declining house prices actually continues and gets worse to negative 4.9% price decline from 4.5. The problem with this is that this really threatens banking and financial system in China, but it can trigger financial crisis in China. At the same time, I think, given that export machine is still working, this situation might be offset by the export engine. So it's still not at the level where it's going to be unmanageable. Let's put this way, for China, but it's definitely going in unmanageable territory in that direction. It's not there yet. Then if you look at the situation in industrial production, and I just explained what it is, we can see also a negative trend. It's still, significantly positive, but the trend is definitely in a negative direction. The next metric, fixed asset investment, it's basically you investing in the means of production. Yes, that's the best way to describe it. So that's your future ability to produce more all sorts of goods. And that is declining as well. There is a negative trend there as well. And also this is corroborated by increase in unemployment rate. So as overall, we can see that the economic situation in China is getting worse, is clearly in a negative direction. In some areas, such as housing, it's quite far in a negative territory, while still industrial production and investment still holding on, but clearly it's going to be very hard for China to maintain its GDP goals and also social sort of keep basically population without being going to social unrest. I guess that's sorry for not very not expressing my thoughts in clear way. But this also recipe for negative actions by China. By that I mean potentially going into the war, because if unemployment is high, the best way to, and it's not moral, like it's not my opinion, it's the best way, but that's, let's say, cynical people, the way they think about the situation, how we can employ these people, we can put them on the front line, and that really immediately creates shortage of people in general in society. So that's again pushing Chinese leadership on a path for confrontation. That's this, all of these negative developments, they together cumulatively put China on a confrontational path without any question. Then let's look at the situation in the U.S. Things in the U.S. are not that great either. So first, industrial production in July is down 0.2%. This means relative to 2003, industrial production in the US is down. Manufacturing production, which is, I explained, this is component of the industrial, is barely up 0.1%. So again, there's, as I mentioned many times before, there is no any sorts of manufacturing renaissance in the US. And actually, to prove it that even more, if we index July 2024 to July 2017 and compare, so July 2024 would be 99.5% of the manufacturing production relative to 2017. So basically, US is producing, manufacturing fewer goods than it was in 2017. So it's basically, you kind of go back in a negative direction into the past. You haven't developed, you haven't sort of moved forward for all of this, I don't know, whatever it is, 7 years or something like that. And this is similar trend, by the way, with Germany, except Germany is in a much worse situation where it's really significantly negative. Here it's kind of sort of we can call it stable or close to stable. But in Germany, it's, I showed the chart. It's I would say looking very bad, and the problem is that these policies are still active, which means things gonna get worse before hopefully they're gonna get better. Also, consistent with this lackluster situation in this whole industrial production manufacturing is capacity utilization, which dropped to 77.8% from 78.4%. So it's quite noticeable drop. Again, also signs that U.S. Economy is cooling down. The one thing that's still sort of bright spot and actually reversed to in some way to prior situation it was a couple months ago is U.S. Unemployment situation. And so initial jobless claims, both seasonal adjustment and not seasonal adjustment, which I mentioned before, are more reliable. They all at fairly low level, as you can see. So that's consistent with a, I would say, weakening but still strong labor market in the U.S. And then continuing jobless claims remain elevated. At the same time, they're not going through the roof. So going back to what I mentioned before, there is not that many people who got laid off, but those who got laid off having problem finding jobs. That's basically the story in the U.S. So which again, consistent with the idea of cooling economy, but it's slowly cooling. So it's hard to find a job because there's not that many new job openings, but there's no really sort of mass layoffs in the U.S. And then the key figure actually to all of this situation, I think, is this government debt, which went over 35 trillion and continuing to grow. Um, I believe that this mm, labor market is going to remain strong as long as there is growth of this debt. So as long as US is able to add more debt, this labor market will remain relatively contained, relatively stable, relatively okay, and then that basically keeps everything else relatively okay in the U.S. It's not perfect, but it's still sort of staying above the sort of sea level. The So I think this government debt situation is going to be really the most important key figure in coming years. And when there is sort of problem with issuing more debt for U.S. government, that's when things probably will unravel. This will be probably a trigger for that. Now let's look at the situation in Japan. And the reason I just want to mention Japan is because surprisingly they put very positive GDP print, 3.1% for second quarter, which is very good for Japan, which basically never seen, well, haven't seen much of the positive growth since I think early 90s, late 80s. So this looks really bright. Not sure if this is just one-off or this is some change in situation, which somehow I'm skeptical that this is really sort of a new trend, but so far it looked positive in Japan. So Japan is bright spot for now, not clear for how long. Then I want to switch to the situation of confrontation between China and the US, and China moving closer into its alliance with Russia. So China banned or severely restricted export of antimony. This is mineral that's widely used in military applications. Well, not only military, but anything infrared. It's using antimony with indium. Uh, so so all of those devices are gonna get expensive, and there will be shortages of those. Not only that, but there is actually blow uh, to the US manufacturing, because these devices now can be manufactured without problem in China, but US, because it's losing its supply of the raw material, it cannot assemble any, or I would say this: it can assemble in very limited quantities of anything infrared. This is not only for infrared, but it has significant uses in many other, including ammunition. Um, One of the components. Then it's used as alloying material for armor-piercing bullets, for um, steel that's basically let's say improved by adding tungsten and antimony. So there is a lot of applications for this material. There are also actually a lot of it's this material is very toxic, and but unfortunately, in some ways, it's being used for as flame retardant, which is very, let's say, not thoughtful, because any mm, clothes, and that actually in some military applications, that the clothes is basically soaked into material that includes antimony, and then that's obviously very toxic to the people who wear that clothes. So basically, they self-poisoning slowly but surely. So in some ways, maybe it's even better that it's gonna get it will go away because it's a extremely toxic material. But it also means that West has really big problem with manufacturing ammunition and anything infrared, which is, as everybody understands, super important part for the warfare, because it's all night vision stuff. All of that is becoming difficult to manufacture, and even having said that, this is actually take it back. So in some ways, this antimony is kind of like your cheap version of rare earth materials, because if for those who remember, who watched, China decreased or created limits on export of I think germanium, and got another one, rare earth material. So those who are more sort of for high-end applications, this is more like sort of antimony is more for like lower-end applications. So sure, over time there will be some solutions with other materials, but in the short and medium term, it really creates huge problems. And another point I want to make is that supply of this material is really constrained to a couple places. This is all these 5 places are really almost 95% of the or 90% of the supply, and China then significant portion, close to 50% plus minus, then Russia, then Tajikistan, which is part of the former Soviet Union. As you can see, it's bordering China, so China can easily influence Tajikistan with respect to its export. So and then also Myanmar, which is also the government there is definitely controlled by China. So effectively, this all top four are controlled by China, or this alliance that sort of formed. The only other the only supply that West has is really Australia, and then US is trying to revive abandoned mine that used to produce antimony for the US, but that mine is not going to be enough, not even close. It's basically kind of like a starvation diet for the West, so it's absolutely insufficient. So this is basically another step in confrontation. Given what I mentioned economically, what's going on in China, it's really not a great sign. Let's put it this way. Now let's. I just want to share some curiosity. In Russia, this is a Russian subway, and apparently, in Moscow, Russian government is practicing testing equipment for the case of nuclear war. So as you can see, this is actually a gate that was attempting to seal off this subway station from outside world. So basically, if there is nuclear explosion, then radiation there's fewer radiation that's going to go inside of the station, basically. And this was built during Soviet time exactly for those purposes. So as you can see, this gray thing is actually this gate that's sort of supposed to go up and completely seal the station and supposedly save people inside of that station. But as you can see, the tests show that this does not work, that it's broken. It wasn't maintained for all of this, 30 years since the collapse of the Soviet Union. But it kind of tells you intentions of the Russian government, and when they preparing actively for worst case scenario, which could be exchange of nuclear strikes. Now let's move to the situation in Ukraine. In Ukraine, things are getting really bad economically, which I think nobody's surprised. But they're getting to the point that Ukrainian government does not have enough money to pay teachers and the, the medical workers. I guess that's, if that's the right word expression. So it appears that this sort of government employees will not have their salaries in December of 24. And the reason for that is that Ukrainian government doesn't have enough money to pay Ukrainian soldiers, so they take money from these government employees from their December pay to pay right now, to pay September for Ukrainian soldiers. So as you can see, things are really getting into dire situation in Ukraine economically, and I would say that state finances are starting to unravel. I wouldn't. To be fair, a lot of it is problem of corruption, misuse, and when the flow of funds from the West is diminishing, all of this sort of corrupt ugliness are becoming very clear. And the only problem is that it will be also clear that a significant portion of the state finances were looted by all sorts of people. And there will be simply Ukraine is getting to the point of not having money to pay soldiers on the front line. Again, things, it's very clear sign that things are getting very dire in Ukraine. Now let's do a walk through the front line in a clockwise fashion, the way I always do. As a whole, I just want to as a quick summary, is that this incursion into the Russian territory by Ukrainian forces, and specifically more Kursk region, is I would say it's becoming slowly but surely clear that this is misguided action, because Russian government, Russian military is not, or they pull some of the units from the front lines, from the main part of the front line in Ukraine. But their main strategy is actually to use conscripts, which is local conscripts there, and a little bit of this pooled units, couple, I think like three at this point known, three of them, or maybe even four, just to contain Ukrainian forces or slow down their expansion to absolute minimum. And they're willing to sort of trade the territory, which is really it's kind of like a dead end. There's not much there. And at the same time, Russian command is continuing to push in the area west of Avdiivka. I'll show you, and it's becoming, it's on the verge of complete disastrous unraveling for Ukraine. But let's just first look at the situation in Kursk region of Russia. So Ukrainian forces are essentially stalled their expansion into this Russian territory. The one clear goal for Ukrainian forces is what they're attempting to do is to clear this whole area between River Seym and Ukrainian territory. So what Ukrainian forces did, they destroyed two bridges out of the three. So there is sort of the smallest bridge is left, which is really making it extremely difficult for Russian military to resupply its conscripts. It's actually filled with conscripts. There is no sort of call it main battlefield units here. So it's becoming difficult to resupply them, and Ukraine forces will attempt to basically capture this territory. It doesn't give anything at all. It doesn't help with anything. But there could be some reports saying, okay, we captured another whatever, a couple hundred square kilometers or whatever it's going to be. But it doesn't lead to anything. So the main area of attack where there could be something still very unclear what the strategic goal is still not there, but at least move to this Kurchatov area in Kursk. Ukrainian forces stalled here at this point. There is not much of a movement there. So essentially, it's slowing down noticeably, and there is no sort of strategic future with this move here. This is how it looked on the 13. As you can see, there's not really many changes there. And this is initial move. Well, not initial move. This is move on August 9th. Now let's look at the situation northeast of Kharkiv. Things here are more or less the same. Again, it's unclear if Russian command actually pulled entire of 155th Naval Infantry Brigade from here to Kursk region, or there could be some battalion there. But this is sort of what Russian command is doing. They're not pulling anything from this Donetsk area, basically. And general situation here more or less stable with some renewed Russian pressure. They're trying to get back to Liptsi, but it's push. It's really nothing meaningful is happening here. Now let's look at the situation on the North Lugansk section of the front line. So Russian troops making some moves in the western direction towards Skil River in the area of Peshane. Again, nothing sort of positive here, but situation is not out of control for Ukrainian army here. Now let's look at the situation on the North Donbas front line. And things here basically in some ways on pause. It's very clear it's not strategic area for Russian command. They try to push in a frontal squeeze, realize it doesn't quite work, so it's sort of in slow motion here. And similar actually situation around Chasiv. It probably became clear for Russian command that this is again not the main area where they can reach success, and then they need forces in Kursk region. So this has become basically somewhat on pause. So in some ways, this is some relief for Ukrainian forces, but really not where it's needed. Now let's move to the central Donbas section of the front line, where things are really getting ugly for Ukrainian forces. And the reason I'm saying this is the map, and the front line is becoming really unraveling. And Russian troops are capturing couple villages per day. They even managed to break through to this how you call it, basically byproduct of coal mine. I think hip cone. I think that's the name of it. Forgot the name actually. But this allows them to basically to control this whole area, including Selidove. And that's really going to be springboard to probably move south or move like behind Selidove from the west. But things really out of control for Ukrainian forces here. Also, Russian troops actively advancing here. They attacking this Novohorodivka. really, as I said, situation is becoming very, very dangerous. And after Pokrovsk, there is really not much of um, urban sort of urban territories, so it's going to be fairly easy to move forward for Russian troops. And after Pokrovsk, it's essentially straight road to Dnipro. This is how it used to be couple, on the 9th, as you can see. So as you can see, significant advances by Russian troops in a very short period of time. And this is on the 3rd. So what I was trying to say is that after Pokrovsk is a straight road to Dnipro. And that would be really disastrous situation for Ukraine, because that really means that Ukraine is. Let me just look. Let's look at this map. If Russian troops manage to go straight and reach Dnipro, the city Dnipro, so essentially Ukraine loses all of this territory, and then it's actually very logical for Russian troops to turn and move north and attack Kharkiv from the rear and capture Kharkiv. So this would really allow Russian military, Russian political top to have significant victory in Ukraine, after which I would say Ukraine is not going to be viable as a state and will not be able to continue defending itself. Then the rest will be very quickly picked up by Russian troops. So that's why this development is extremely dangerous. I'm not saying that Russian troops are getting to Dnipro, city of Dnipro, tomorrow or in 10 days or in a month, but this is where long term, where this whole situation is going. Now let's look at the situation on the Zaporizhya front line, and this is a sort of relatively quiet section. It's becoming a donor of various units for Russian troops that are either defending Kursk or attacking in this towards Pokrovsk and Selidove. Now let's finish with the situation along the Dnipro River. Things also quiet here. The same situation. This area is becoming donor of units for other areas of Russian for other areas of the front line where Russian troops are attacking. That's it for today. Thanks for watching. Until next time. Bye bye.